Hey, 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 it's Rycluse, back with another installment of the world-renowned Best Things of the Year series, taking place in the first week of December because, truthfully, I think we've all given up on anything good happening for the rest of the year. And you know the rules. It can be a movie, it can be a sandwich, it can be a meme. And I'll jump right in with the first honorable mention, Wooly vs. John from the Versus Wolves podcast. Going forward, I want these lists to have a general policy of limiting any sort of repeat entries year after year, because I just think that can get pretty stale, but I will make the exception if there's something incredibly specific that makes it back, and I'm also just keeping it in the honorable mentions section. And so that's why I want to talk about this particular episode of the World's Strongest Book Club, which, in opposition to the normal theme of the two of them recommending pieces of media or other experiences to each other, featured our lovely Canadian and Irish hosts having an actual physical fight against each other. First boxing, and then Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then a boxing match out in a muddy field in the middle of a park somewhere in Montreal. It's Montreal, right? I'm not gonna check. This is the second channel. Anyway, this was an outstanding episode for a variety of reasons. First, it's always good when you have hosts of any sort of show like this getting in the same place and talk about something. This was also a subject of particular interest to both of them. They both love fighting in some way or another. They're both fans of fighting games, and John in particular is big into actual martial arts. John dropped a really nice line in this episode where he simply said, "It's not about beating you, it's about showing you what fighting means to me." And there was definitely a moment in that final round between them where you could tell that they were both entirely in the present. It was a lovely episode all around, and some really nice fan art came out of it as well. Next honorable mention, Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I'll be real with you all, the only reason that this is in the honorable mention section is because I started playing this game a week ago. But it's plainly obvious that this is a masterpiece in the making. This game has outstanding visuals, it has incredibly compelling characters, it's got some of the cleanest feeling combat you'll find anywhere, and it's a game that can be serious, but it could also be goofy. For all the jokes that people make about French, the fact that this game has a recurring mime enemy who has an accordion theme tune and hits you with an invisible hammer and rewards you with costumes for your character where they're carrying a baguette, it is magnifique. Third and final honorable mention, Strixhaven: A Curriculum of Chaos. This is a Dungeons & Dragons supplement. It's a setting and an adventure, and I've been in a Strixhaven game for the past 2 years, and it just wrapped up this year. And to be truthful, Strixhaven is a terrible book. It really is trying to split its attention too much between being a setting and being an adventure, and the adventure is written with a really bizarre set of assumptions. Essentially that you're more interested in the school time side of Harry Potter than the actual adventure side, and assumes that the players are just terribly incurious. But I had the benefit of having an extremely good DM for the past 2 years, who is one of the funniest people that I've ever known, and a table of people who were really getting into a groove with each other at the end, turning the tone of this campaign less Wizards of Waverly Place and more Animal House, featuring some truly awful running bits through the years, including The Grunch and Cuckfest 2025, and I will not explain any of them. Moving on to the list proper. Number 10, Gene the Machine Zero. This is probably the most niche entry I'm ever going to put on any of these lists, because this is a YouTube channel with not even 1,000 subscribers. And it's in a niche that I think the majority of people wouldn't even be interested in. This guy primarily makes Kagurabachi memes. You might remember Kagurabachi was on 2 of my previous lists. Again, trying to keep with the rules, that will not be making the list this year. Anyway, this guy does meme videos. And basically, I put him here for 2 reasons. The first is that Look, to my fellow boomers who enjoyed the Gary's Mod era of YouTube, you will understand that I do not say this lightly. The spirit of Kideo706 lives on through this channel. This guy has such a manic sense of humor with how he sets up his plots and jokes that really brings me back to the chaotic, ramshackle energy of those old days. But the second reason is more than that is it's actually capable of having a surprising amount of heart at times with some of the ongoing narratives that it's been building. Particularly the episode that capped off the subplot of the crack ship between series villain Yura and, what's her name, Descaris from Itchy the Witch. Kind of seriously addressing the question of, okay, you know, if a guy's going to have Pepe Le Pew energy and relentlessly pursue this woman that's clearly not interested, are we eventually going to wrap it around into making this guy a little bit less creepy? It's just been a joy of a series to be keeping track of. Number 9. A Muslim being elected mayor of New York City on the same day that Dick Cheney died. I feel like this one is self-explanatory. Number 8. Foundry Virtual Tabletop. I've been getting into all sorts of tabletop games this year, and one of them has been playing Pathfinder. I did a little bit of Pathfinder playing last year. This time, I'm doing a little bit of Pathfinder GMing. And Foundry is such an incredible tool if you're getting really into tabletop games, especially some of the more crunchy technical ones like Pathfinder, because this lets you handle so much of the bookkeeping in the background while you are focusing on the actual design and storytelling. Foundry is it's a virtual tabletop that you host on your own computer and other people can access just through their web browsers, and it's dramatically extensible. You're able to add so many fun little things just based on what you personally want in the game, whether it's a cool little freeze frame when someone gets a nat 20, or just some scripts that enable people to overlay multiple abilities at once. It's a great facilitator of the fun. Number 7. The Shadow of the Leviathan series, including The Tainted Cup and A Drop of Corruption. This is a brand new series of books that very much wears its influences on its sleeve. I think the blurb might even say, this is a Holmes and Watson style story. It is a series from the perspective of a mild-mannered assistant working for an extremely eccentric detective going around solving all sorts of crimes. And that is a formula that works. I mean, it's a formula that was behind one of the most classic literature series of all time. And what makes this one have its own identity is two things. First is its extremely weird setting. The Shadow of the Leviathan series takes place in, I guess, what you would call a post-industrial society, but one that is completely different from our own. One where bioengineering has taken the place of most technology as we know it. One of the first things that we see in the beginning of the first book is a locked door that is essentially a curtain of stinging vines that can only be bypassed when holding this key that emits a pheromone that makes them retract. And this is something that is completely natural to the people in this world. Moreover, people are bioengineered as well. The role that the main character has is that he has a perfect memory, and he goes to scenes and he engraves all of it, that's the term they use, and brings it back to his Sherlock Holmes, who is a middle-aged woman named Anna Delabra, who is one of the most delightfully eccentric characters I've perhaps ever seen. While this series certainly stacks a lot of its appeal on Anna and could have worked very well in that way, the series has a quite excellent supporting cast. The main perspective character, Dinius Cole, and a lot of the villains and the minor supporting characters make this an incredibly enjoyable series to read, and it's also one of those fantasy series that could have been very opaque and difficult to understand, but it introduces all of its wilder ideas in a very comprehensible way. Cannot recommend it enough. Number 6, Scarlet Hollow. Obviously, I made a video about this one because I loved it so much, which you should watch because apparently not a lot of people did. Scarlet Hollow is the first game made by the people who made Slay the Princess, although it is still in progress. 4 out of the 7 chapters are currently out, and the 5th one is coming in the beginning of next year. Scarlet Hollow, I think, seriously has the potential to exceed Slay the Princess if it continues on its current course. And Slay the Princess is obviously brilliant. It was my favorite thing of 2023. It is decidedly different in tone. It is a small town mystery about playing as a character who goes to a town that was largely founded by your more distant family, and finding that there's all sorts of spooky supernatural stuff going on in the town. By far, the biggest selling point of this game is the absurd breadth of choice. This is a game where your choices truly matter, and not in the sense that you are creating completely divergent plots, but in the sense that you are defining the tone of this story, your relationships to other characters, and the kind of main character that you have. I can't think of a single other game where my own custom protagonist was as compelling as the 3 different protagonists that I have had in this game. The degree to which you can make your own personality and how it connects with the themes of the story and the other players is absolutely insane. To give a simple example, my 3rd playthrough, I was essentially playing as Kronk from The Emperor's New Groove, a extremely strong, extremely attractive character that can talk to animals. But because I had 3 traits, I was playing in hardcore mode, which made the story honestly extremely grim. So it was a bit of a weird case where in other playthroughs, this story was a lot more hopeful. In this one, there's terrible things happening all around, but this delightful himbo that I have as a main character was like a beacon of hope throughout the entire thing. Number 5, Deltarune Chapter 3 and 4. The most recent installment of Toby Fox's brilliant Deltarune is perhaps not as much of a revolution as Chapter 2 was, but it is still some of the most compelling gameplay and story that is in the business and actively coming out right now. These games can be so funny and so bone-chilling at the drop of a hat. And I think with this installment, we've gotten into perhaps one of the weirdest meta plots that I've ever seen in a game. I've made jokes in the past about games exploring the relationship between player and character, but I'll be damned, this one does it in such an interesting way. And I almost don't want to say anything else because, you know, there's people listening who might be waiting to play it. In fact, I know there are. There's some people that will just actively refuse to play an episodic game while it's coming out, and I get it. But goddamn, being in the zeitgeist of this particular story as it unfolds, this potentially historic game story, is an incredible experience. Number 4, the Mistborn series. This year has gone on so long that I almost forgot that I read this year, but when I was compiling this list, I had to check some of my text history from when I was talking to people about this and realized, oh yeah, Mistborn. So Mistborn, honestly, if you read like any books at all, which, truth be told, before this year, I didn't, you've probably at least heard of this series. This is the probably most famous work of extremely prolific fantasy author Brandon Sanderson. And it's well known and it's well loved for a reason. Here's a crazy parallel. This series has a lot in it that I also like about the movie Hot Fuzz. And I know that sounds absolutely insane, but what I mean by that is in both of these stories, there is not an inch of it that is wasted. It is astounding when you start to realize how much stuff was seeded early on in these stories that comes back in a big way later, all the way up to the very conclusion of the final book, stuff that appeared in the very, very start of the series. The Mistborn series basically starts out as a sort of magical heist, as this young thief girl gets roped in with this group of thieves that are preparing like the heist of the Millennium. Well, not really a heist, more of an assassination. You'll read, but it's got. I know also that saying, wow, it's got such an interesting magic system is the kind of thing that turns people off. It's not the kind of series that tries to hinge too much of its plot around the magic. Now, the magic is important to the plot, but not in a way that detracts from the characters. This series has incredible characters, incredible fights and supernatural stuff, and just probably the most satisfying beginning to end plot that I've seen in quite a while. Number 3, the Chainsaw Man movie Reize Arc. The Chainsaw Man manga is probably my favorite media property of the past 5 years, maybe 10? It's hard to say. And if I could put it in a single sentence, what I see in Chainsaw Man, it's that this is a story that makes me feel everything. Chainsaw Man is at once, a incredibly fun, high-octane action series that can dip into some of the most chilling horror. And it can be goofy, it can be incredibly emotional. And when the first season of the anime came out a year or two ago, I thought it was excellent, but I think there was about 10% of that little esoteric quality that truly made it one of my all-time favorites that didn't quite exist. This movie has that esoteric quality. This movie gets Chainsaw Man. This is a movie that on one hand has the main character riding a shark into a typhoon, on the other hand, has some very understated and subtle moments of realization when you realize, among all this supernatural stuff, the very human and very chilling abuse that is being inflicted on incredibly vulnerable people. This scene has scenes that make me laugh. This movie has scenes that make me cry. This movie has scenes that make me fall in love. This movie makes me feel everything. It gets Chainsaw Man. Number 2, Your Idol. K-Pop Demon Hunters is an excellent movie that I only watched like a month ago. But I have been enjoying its music for the better part of the year. And this song, I think, stands head and shoulders above the rest. And oh my god, I just need to gush about it. Man, almost talking about it would be an entire video in and of itself, maybe a second channel video. But very basically, it's been said by people who are smarter about literature than me that a monster is never just a monster. And that doesn't necessarily mean that a monster is a direct metaphor for something that a culture is afraid of. But I think that anything that we write in an attempt to scare ourselves as human beings is going to, in some extent, draw upon the culture that it came from. And what this song and the Saja boys that sing it essentially embody, to me, is parasociality elevated to its most unhealthy extent. Basically, this song is a band of demons masquerading as a boy band, trying to hypnotize people with their song and, draw them in so they can take their souls. But I think what makes this song work so well is that it is not that different from a actual thirst trap, boy band pop song. That it has like the dancing that's more sensual than it's been for the entire movie. That it has these lyrics that encourage their audience to make this band and their music their entire life. The very first spoken lyrics are, keeping you in check, keeping you obsessed, play me on repeat endlessly in your head. Anytime it hurts, play another verse that I can be your sanctuary. Like, it's leveraging that angle so hard that this is a thing that real bands and pop stars do. They're not so blatant about it and they're not so evil about it, but this is a thing in the real world. It is chilling. It is a perfect villain song, and it's a fucking bop. Number 1, Hollow Knight Silksong. Am I basic for making my number 1 thing of the year one of the most anticipated games of the decade? No, because this is a game that was made for me. It was made for me personally. I'm glad that all of you out there got to enjoy it, but Team Cherry was actually in very personal correspondence with me. They sent me a copy, and they come over on the weekends to play with me, and we play the game and we talk about our feelings. Everything about Hollow Knight Silksong is so perfectly up my alley that I think it's kind of astounding. The way that it's art, it's gorgeous hand-drawn art, it's incredible feeling combat. The story that I think benefits so much from a protagonist with actual personality versus the very intentional void of personality from the previous game. The exploration that gives me the same feeling as my first time playing Dark Souls. And even the more controversial aspects of this game I enjoy. I enjoy the spiky difficulty. Dare I say it, I think the boss runbacks are good. But more on that in a main channel video coming sometime in the near future. And I think that's it for now. So, everyone have a happy holiday season, stay safe, and I'll catch you on L Flipside.